everyone, and thanks for having us today. Thanks, Sam, for the opportunity to talk to you guys today. So, my name is Sanie. With me I have John Lanuti, who's going to come and talk. He's actually going to do most of the presentation today. I'll just kind of warm up his act. So, the first question, who are we? So, we work, as Sam mentioned, we work for IBM. Now, IBM is a large company, right? There's a lot going on in IBM. We are specifically in IBM Rational. Now, if I were to do word association, especially some of you older people here, and I would ask you, what associate with rational? What would the first thing, and maybe I'm not going to open it for answers, I'm afraid what I'm going to hear, but for most people, if you say rational, what they would say would be, oh no, you're spoiling what? Rational rows, right? Rational rows. So Rational Rows was one of our flag products maybe 20 years ago, right? It was a very successful product, had UML modeling capabilities. Now, it's amazing because we stopped kind of marketing this product maybe 10, 15 years ago. We have other products that do the same thing. And yet, time and again, when we go to customers, we say we're from Rational, they say, oh, Rational Rows. So it's either a testimony for how good the product was or how we should improve our marketing and let people know that we have so many other things besides Rational Rows. So that's what comes to mind when we say Rational Rows. So Rational has evolved tremendously since the Rows days, and we have a lot of new things. Some of it we're going to talk about today. So we are a vendor essentially. Now I attended some of the meetups here, this group in the past. Now the reason I attended only some of them is because I'm actually not local. I live in South Jersey. And that's where the accent is from, right? Everybody sounds like that over there. But in the meetups that I attended, most of the presentations were given by what I would call practitioners, okay? People who are actually implementing and doing DevOps and continuous delivery by themselves. I know a couple of months ago you had a vendor called CA. Never heard of them, but I know so you had vendors as well. So our take today is going to be a bit different, okay? We're not going to tell you the story of practitioners of how we do DevOps. I think we're going to tell you an interesting story. We're going to tell you what do we see and hear from the dozens of customers that we talk to every year. What are they facing? How do they deal with issues of continuous delivery, of DevOps? This is one thing. Another thing we're going to tell you about, and I think it should be my next bullet point, we're going to tell you what we see from our customers, but we're also going to tell you what we see internally in IBM. Now, IBM is one of the largest software development organizations in the world. Now, I keep hearing different numbers internally, but we have maybe as high as 50,000 people who are actually developing software. Now, that's a lot of people. If you include software group, which is the part of IBM that Rational is, and GPS, which is our services arm, okay, we have tens of thousands of people developing software. So some of the things you're going to hear from us today have to do with how do we use DevOps internally in IBM? What did we learn by doing DevOps and continuous delivery? Again, large organization, a lot of accumulated experience in software development. So we're going to talk about that as well. Okay, so two interesting things. So I mentioned to you, we go a lot to customers, we talk to a lot of customers, and we see a lot of interesting things. One thing that we see, and I'm sure it resonates with you because you guys probably noticed the same thing, is when you talk to practitioners, there's almost a spectrum on which you can locate IT professionals in how involved and engaged they are with what the line of business is doing, okay? And what do I mean by that? You know that some people, probably people that you work with, probably maybe you yourself, some people are very engaged and have very deep and solid understanding of what the business is doing, okay? So you could be working for an insurance provider, for example. So some IT professionals, people who are not line of business, but people from IT have a very deep and profound understanding of what the company is doing, okay? They know about insurance a lot. They know what are the challenges. They know what problems the company is facing, what challenges. They know exactly what's going on from a business aspect. That's one end of the spectrum. And then it goes all the way to the other side. Now, I'm definitely not passing judgment here. I'm not saying it's better to be one or another. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have people with very little knowledge about what the business is doing. Today they work for an insurance company. Tomorrow they're going to work for a government agency. Next month they're going to work for a hotel chain, okay? They're very, very focused on the technology, okay? It makes sense, right? I think we all kind of are somewhere along the spectrum. Now, why am I mentioning that? Because in a few minutes we're going to define IBM's vision of DevOps. How do we, as a large company, how do we see DevOps? What is our understanding of DevOps? And you will see that depends on where you are in the spectrum. Our definition of DevOps is going to resonate differently with you, okay? Because, and I'm going to tell you that right now, we have what you may consider a broader definition of what DevOps is, okay? If you're a practitioner, if you are a very technical person, if you're on the side of the spectrum that's really concerned about the bits and the bytes and the technology, then you may find our definition of DevOps maybe a bit broader. Because, for example, we see DevOps as an enterprise capability, as something that will help the business provide or create better software. Some people immediately think that, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we mean by DevOps. For other people, DevOps is more about the chef and the puppet and the standing up the servers and so on. So it depends where you are on the spectrum. You may feel differently about our definition. Our definition is broad, and I'll touch that in just a second. I'll tell you exactly what I mean. Another insight that I can tell you from talking to a lot of customers is that software, IT and software development in particular, is truly a source of competitive advantage for companies. Now, and this is not just a slogan, right? What do I mean by that? Well, as part of our job, we talk to executives, we talk to people. So we have 2 large local hotel chains in our territory. You probably can guess who they are. And when you talk to their executives, you can see how, not people from IT, line of business executive, you see how the work of the IT organization is truly a competitive advantage for them. So for example, hotel chains, you probably know, they care a lot about their points program. You know, when you go to one hotel, you have one point program. You go to another hotel, you may have a different points program, okay? They care a lot about these programs because these programs are very important for their business, okay? You'll be amazed to know how much they monitor each other's program to make sure they're up to par and they keep, each program is more or less the same. And these programs are being managed by their IT organizations. So if somebody has an idea about how to change the program or how to improve the points program, who's going to implement that idea? People from IT, right? So we see time and again, IT, software development is truly important to the business. It's a competitive advantage to the business. Now again, if you're on this side of the spectrum, if you're very involved in your business, then of course it makes sense to you. You see that with your own eyes. You see how the work that you're doing is contributing to the bottom line of the business. If you're somewhere in the server room dealing with more technical and tactical stuff, you may not be aware of that because you're thinking about, I have to create this new schema. You think more about what I need to do from a technical perspective. But trust us, take our word from talking to many customers. IT is really important to the business, okay? So this is one point. Within that, now, why am I mentioning that? Because we all have to remember that continuous delivery and DevOps are not the end to itself, okay? They're means to an end. Why are we doing DevOps? It's not just to play with the new technology. It's not just to make our life easier. No, it's because at the end of the day, somewhere down the line, we hope it's going to improve some business result, okay? As Bob Dylan said, you got to serve somebody, right? Typically in IT, we serve some other line of business, right? Our work is the input for somebody else. So DevOps is not the end for itself, it's just a means to make better business results, okay? So that's something that was important to kind of define from the get-go. Okay, so let's talk about some few points, and then I'm going to let John continue. How do I go back? Okay, so this slide. So you see the different numbers there. Now, as a software vendor, IBM cares a lot about what's going on in the market, okay? What do you people do? What do you people think? What are the challenges that you guys are facing? How do we know what are those challenges? Well, there's many ways to know that. We talk to customers, we have conferences, we have discussions. But one thing we do a lot, and I believe other vendors are also doing, we're doing surveys of the market. We're doing a lot of surveys. Now, some of the surveys we're doing ourselves, some of the surveys we let other IT consulting groups like Gartner do for us. And then, as a result of these surveys, we get these numbers. And you see those numbers, you know, they talk about some challenges that we're all facing. For me, and I think for you also, the most important number should be right here, okay? So, consistently when we talk to customers, consistently when we do surveys, we find that, I mean, here you see the number 70%, we sometimes hear more, we sometimes hear less. But the takeaway here is this: huge percent of your IT budget goes to maintenance, to keeping the lights on, to paying for vendors like us, for paying for servers, electricity, payroll is a huge chunk of that. So a huge, huge, huge percentage of the budget that your organizations have goes for things that are not discretionary, things that you have to pay for, okay? Which means that you have only small percentage of that goes towards things that are discretionary, things that the line of business think may bring competitive advantage to the business. So this is something we have to keep in mind. Now, you may ask me, so Alan from IBM, how does that have to do with DevOps? And again, I will tell you, it depends on how you perceive DevOps. If you look at DevOps and continuous delivery in a narrow aspect of it's just about, you know, I'm writing a, you know, infrastructure as a code, then yeah, you may not be concerned. I mean, this number may not be of a concern to you. But if you are concerned about this number, then yes, then DevOps and continuous delivery could be one of the things that you can do in order to make sure that whatever percentage you have for discretionary spending will go for the right things, okay? And you'll see that when IBM talks about DevOps, we start from the beginning. We say part of DevOps is how do you choose which application you're going to develop, okay? How do you choose which projects are worth of being implemented and which projects should be, you know, pass on, okay? Because we know in every organization you have a lot of ideas. People have a lot of ideas. People think they have a lot of good ideas. How do you pick and choose which one makes more sense? How do you, and here I'm going to say something that's a bit of a cliche because you keep hearing that all the time, how do you align IT with the business? We all heard it many, many times. Now, I heard it so many times that I was looking, in my mind, I was looking for an example. I mean, I wanted to see a good example where IT and the business are not really aligned. What does it mean, right? Because we keep hearing that, and at least I heard it a lot. Sometimes you hear about things like SOA. Oh, SOA will align the IT with the business. Like, what does it mean? So I had a chance to work with a distributor, electronics distributor, where for me, from everything I've seen, that was the best example of how IT and business were not aligned. The IT department, after they got through an audit, it turned out that most of their projects had to do with their warehousing system. As a distributor, you have to have a warehouse system. Now, this was not an Amazon type of volume of business, right? It was much, much smaller. Yet, most of their projects had to do with the warehouse. They made the warehouse so optimized that the pickers, you know, every move that the picker had to do was calculated, and the software took that into account. And basically, it turned out that enormous amount of money in IT went in order to make sure that a picker who, let's be realistic, gets paid minimum wage, saves, you know, 15 minutes a day, right? Meanwhile, it turns out that on the marketing side, the industry was going through some turmoil, and they needed another application which could have increased their revenue by a lot. I'm making it very short. So you see a case where IT is working on one thing, but the business really needs something completely different. Now, you couldn't tell it by just walking through the halls, because you see IT people really working, really producing, really delivering, really releasing. There's a new warehouse system coming out all the time. But is that what the business needs? Well, no, not really. So why did it happen? Many reasons, okay? In that particular case, it happened because a lot of the people in IT came from the company that produced that warehousing system. So they were comfortable working on the warehouse projects. The VP of operation was very influential. So a lot of the projects he pushed and promoted, and they were get done. But that's not what the business needed. So if we go back to my point, yes, maybe you should consider part of DevOps deciding which projects to do, steering the right projects that you deliver, okay? So now, that was a long intro. Let's look at what is IBM. How do we think of DevOps, okay? So DevOps, I'll kind of read along with you. Enterprise capability. Enterprise capability, right? We're not talking about a narrow domain of the handoff between developers and operation. We do take that into consideration, right? We have that here, but we take a much broader view. It's an enterprise capability which speeds delivery and deployment to seize market opportunities. Seize market opportunities, okay? Again, we're taking a very high-level view. DevOps is something that will help your line of business seize market opportunities, respond rapidly to customer feedback, and reduce costs while improve product quality, okay? So again, very high-level definition, taking the business view of things, okay? DevOps is more than just the technical stuff. It's something that, at the end of the day, will allow you to get quicker to feedback, get quicker to market, make the right decisions, and deliver software that will improve your business results. That's kind of an overarching goal for the IBM DevOps. And in order to do that, we have a lot of tools, methodologies, and John will cover them. Okay? So, any questions so far about anything that I mentioned? Okay, very good. So I'll let John proceed.
Okay, thanks, Alan. So my name is John Lanuti. I am not from here either. I'm from North Carolina, member of the sister club, the Triangle DevOps community. But I did go to high school in Rockville, Maryland, at Wooten High School. So I used to be local. So I feel somewhat, related to this area. So what I want to talk about, like Alan was saying, is whether you're new to continuous delivery or whether you're tried and true at a certain capability. I want you to just take a step back today and say, why are we doing certain things? Could we be better? Let's do less retrospective here. Are we really helping the business be more successful? So what I would like to talk about is these things. So typically when I talk to people about continuous delivery, they talk about things like continuous integration. If I'm talking to developers, right, they always are like, oh yeah, man, we got Jenkins really going. We got Go going really well for us. Or they talk about Chef and Puppet. Or they talk about what's our cloud strategy. Or we've got a way to provision new operating systems very quickly. But again, those are just very small pieces of a larger DevOps cycle. So what I'd like to do is talk about some other ways that you may not be thinking about to get this continuous delivery working much quicker with higher quality, with lower risk. So we're talking about how do we do a better job of testing and continuous testing. So if you go back to Alan's little chart there of the DevOps world, we've talked about the steering piece, picking the right project at the right time. So we'll talk about how to do testing. Then we'll also touch on continuous deployment. Maybe not so much the Chef and Puppet level, but at the application deployment layer. And then we'll look at some cool things that IBM's doing and what's next for developers and where's the industry going. So we'll stay on those themes today, and I'll cut through some of this stuff to get quickly into the meat here. But basically, at a high level, what we are seeing our customers and our company, IBM, invest in fall into these buckets, right? People are spending on mobile apps, and it's not just smartphones anymore, it's tablets, it's devices. It's becoming this intelligent connected systems. You've heard of it as the Internet of Things, or sometimes I like to think of it as the Internet of Stupid, right? What can we jam devices and sensors into that is going to be a disaster, like kids' kickballs for something to check the speed of how fast you're kicking it. So there'll be some disasters there. But we are spending on cloud, private cloud, public cloud, hybrid, big data, analytics. Hopefully you've heard of IBM Watson, but there are lots of analytic solutions out there. Collaboration, how do we get better use of all of our resources internally? And so what we're seeing is, these are where all the innovation, a lot of dollars want to be spent, but the legacy apps are kind of holding us back. And then we're seeing, well, now we're starting to see people start to use mobile apps that leverage the cloud and use analytics to try and capture information from the legacy systems. And all of a sudden, this is really making continuous delivery much harder if you've got a small team building mobile apps or doing cloud development, and all of a sudden they're asking somebody on a mainframe to update every day. They're going to go nuts, right? They're running the business. They can't update as quickly as, and it's just not possible. So there are ways we can get better at this. So I'm going to throw some more numbers up here. Based upon our studies, is 54% of companies believe software delivery is critical. I don't know what's wrong with the other 46%, but this was cross industries. But only 25% do an effective job. So I like whoever was saying of it earlier that they've turned the corner on their DevOps journey or their continuous delivery journey, because we see it as, not set of tools. It's really all about, processes, people, and tools. And it's never ending, right? It's like when the lights are out, you don't know anything's wrong, that's fine. But once you finally turn the corner, the lights are on, you're always looking for ways to improve. And you're saying, as soon as I make something more effective, I'm putting more stress on my life cycle somewhere else, and I'm going to need to fix it. So a lot of what I do and what we do is, I think of it as like a DevOps doctor, right? So I go into people and they tell me where they're at and what's holding them back, and we can work with the business, or we can work with, with the different groups that they may not talk to. I should mention I have a development background, Java developer, so if anybody's looking for Java developers, no, just kidding. You probably can tell I may have a developer bias, hopefully not, but I try to be pragmatic. But what we're saying here today is 25% of those that are doing it effectively, 70% or 69% outperform their competitors. So if you are doing software effectively, you're winning, which means you're staying in business, which means you're staying employed. So clearly we can do a better job there, and it's becoming much more prevalent. And so as part of a DevOps doctor, these are some of the questions, especially when we cover a lot of different shops just like yours, and they're huge 1,000-person shops or they're 10-person shops. So people are very different industries as well, healthcare versus, born on web companies. So they really have different goals when they get to DevOps. And so we have a lot of questions that we tend to ask you. Where are you at in the journey, and how can we help you? Are you really getting advantage out of what you've been investing in? All right, do you do cloud for dev and test, but what do you deploy in the production team? What's the productivity? What metrics are you using? So there's a lot of questions that we can come in and start to address. And like Alan was saying, when we look at the life cycle, it's really not just about dev and ops and bridging that gap. There are multiple gaps all along the way, and we really focus on all of those, right? I mean, you have to figure out that you're doing the right stuff, get customer feedback, drive that through the line of business, through design, development, testing, as well as operations. And the goal is to make this as rapid as possible with a closed loop for feedback so you can do it again. That's the real goal behind continuous delivery and DevOps and continuous deployment. So, but other people are good at certain areas and other people are bad at certain areas, and so when we go and talk to them, we figure out what's the best way to move forward, and we can help them build that roadmap. But then some areas that you may not think about is testing. So there's some more numbers on here. How long does it take to set up your test environment? So if I'm a developer, and testing is hard, right? And a developer, I really don't like testing so much. But if I finish what I need to do, and I ask for a test environment, and it takes 2 to 8 weeks for me to get the test environment, no way, man, that's unacceptable, especially if I need to deliver in 2 weeks or 4 weeks. I can't wait that long. And then if I do get it, do you think I want to give it back or tear it down and have it be transient? No way, I'm going to hold on to that thing because I don't know when I'm going to get it next. So there's a lot of stresses that are unnecessary, waste that are going on. It takes a long time to produce dashboards and reports. I mean, I can't tell you how many places people have project managers that are so I'm not offending anyone, disconnected from the reality of the world, and by the time they have the data, it's all wrong anyways. So that's really a poor use of time as well. And there's a bunch of other numbers. Outsourcing is becoming, or multi-sourcing really is becoming more and more popular. But are you really getting the objectives that you sought out? So testing is hard. And in a nutshell, what we're saying is we're seeing a lot of pointed investments in the industry, like, oh, let's get this agency building the best mobile app. Oh, let's figure out how we can, which cloud? Should we get Amazon? Should we get IBM? Should we do this? And they're really not talking to each other. So all of these different pockets of investment, what really should be happening is we should be thinking about this holistically and being able to deliver these together. So I think IBM invented these terms, I'm not sure, but systems of engagement refers to web, mobile devices. This is where the innovation is, where the users are. Systems of record is the data, databases, ERP, HR systems. mainframes, whatever, all of the legacy stuff. And a lot of investment is going here, but a lot of it is putting new changes on the system of record. And if we need to deliver those rapidly and quickly with the right quality, we need to be able to deliver them together. We need to think about this DevOps across the enterprise. And that's really what we're looking at. So this is an exercise that you guys can do. We have it on our website here at this link, and we send the slides. You can do a self-assessment. So you don't need me, but this is something I do. You can do this with your own shop. I do it with the people we work with. And basically, this is part of a workshop that we do to say, well, let's figure out, here's our set of best practices. We'll map them across from the steer, which is talking about, are we doing the right thing at the right time? These terms, believe it or not, have been through like a number, so many IBM bureaucratic boards that this used to be like project management or planning. I think it was planning, and they're like, this really looks waterfall, guys. Why? This can't be waterfall, so we had to make it steering. It's like you're always continuously steering. So there's a set of best practices there, and then the development and test, deploy, and operate. And even that is not like operations. It's meant to be a verb just for that specific purpose. And at the bottom is the lowest. These are things that we can do. Yeah, we practice that, and as you go up, it's that's repeatable. And then after that, it's reliable, and then can we do it at scale? And so ideally, if you're in a perfect world, you could be all up here. But the other thing is, it may not make sense for you to be, at scale in all of these, or it may not make sense for you to be there week 1, month 1, year 1. Let's figure out where you're at. Let's do a self-assessment, of these practices, map versus the industry average, and figure out how we can get better. Because a lot of continuous delivery is also about your customers. So just because I can put stuff out there faster doesn't mean that my customers are ready to accept it. So for example, on a mobile app, our customers like me, I'm ready to accept your changes. It's getting a little old having these things always updating in the background, but we want that, we demand it. However, if I was, like the company I was at, who was building a missile launch system on a nuclear sub, do I really want updates every day, and would I trust those updates every day? Heck no. I mean, as a citizen, I hope not. I hope they're testing that, and that's the one thing I hope is a defect-free system, truly. So you've got to be willing to go where your customers are, because they have to participate in this life cycle as well, and be willing to give you feedback so that you can drive those loops. Otherwise, you're just producing software that nobody's using. So that's waste as well. So think about the industry you're in, and what are your end users, the customers, maybe internal, external, whoever your users are. Make sure they're ready to be in the life cycle. So we call this like a DevOps, a self-assessment. And it's a good way just to go and gauge where people, what they think about, where they're at and where they want to go. And it helps drive a lot of conversations. But something you guys could do too. And this would be something, it kind of looks like, at a high level, we would start to draw all these things out. What does your pipeline look like? How many different environment stages do you go through? Is it easy to get feedback from requirements, line of business, yada, yada, yada? Because really what we're talking about when we think of DevOps, it's getting ideas into production. That's it. How do we do that? And getting feedback from it, and so we can do it again. But there's a lot of stuff involved there, and that's where we start to figure out, all right, it seems like maybe we have manual deployments. All right, well, let's come back to that. It looks like when we move from build to QA, our builds are taking too long. Or let's say as an integration tester, it takes too long to get an environment set up. All right, we'll come back to that. Or we don't have any cloud yet. Whatever it may be, we can look at all the handout. What does it take to get an idea, follow that idea through into production? And you'd be amazed how well this works. It may sound simple, but a lot of times you get a line of business requirements analyst, you get a tester, you get developers, you get IT operations that were never in the same room before. And all of a sudden they're talking about, well, I didn't know that was a problem that testing took this long, or I didn't know that was a problem that I was so lazy getting back to you with environments. Or do you guys want something better? self-provisioning? Oh, yeah, all right, well, that, and then a lot of stuff happens from there. So that's usually worked well for us. All right, so what I want to talk about is, usually when we come out of that, we come out with some recommendations on your bottlenecks. And some of these you may not think about, because a lot of times, like I said, people think about Jenkins, Chef, Puppet. So I want to talk about two other areas that can help with your continuous delivery. So everybody knows they have a source control tool. Even I've heard this on some TV shows talking about source control tools, or maybe there was a lack of a tool. I forget which one it was. Anyways, continuous integration, you do the build, you get your source control, you build it, it goes into a repository, deployable repository, and now what? You probably want to do some sort of deployment automation, and so that may go to a dev or to a QA. But you also need to do testing, and this testing could be against a dev and QA, or maybe it could be against a set of virtualized services. So how can we run our testing against services that may not exist yet? And here we're really talking about how do we deploy an application to that environment. Not how do we set up the environment, but how do we deploy that application. So those are really the two areas I want to talk about, is application deployment automation, orchestration, as well as service virtualization and testing. And we'll hit the service virtualization testing first. So there's some words that you maybe cannot see that picture yet, but this concept of service virtualization testing is the word virtualization. I didn't make it up again, it's not my fault. It's not like VMware. It means emulation. It's a proxy. So I'll explain this in non-technical terms, and then I'll come back to it. So if we were the Washington Redskins, let's say, and we wanted to test, as the offensive coordinator, sending in the signal call to RG3, or the flavor of the week quarterback for the Redskins, what we would do is we need to get RG3 in the helmet, and I'd give him the play, and then he would come back and say it worked. Well, maybe RG3 is hard to get a hold of just to test out this whole, configuration system. So, well, maybe what I could do is make that call and then have something intercepted. We have a proxy server intercept the call and give back the result that says, hey, I got it, it looks good. But we didn't actually have RG3 really there. We don't really need him. We can use a virtualized instance of RG3. That's what we're talking about here with service virtualization testing. Meaning if I'm working on an app that requires integrations to other apps, which basically almost everything does these days, if I need to truly test that, I need a lot of systems available. So think about your company's website, think about your app and how many different dependencies, databases, other servers, other information. And if I want to do testing, integration testing, because I want to move defects found earlier in the life cycle, I got to set up a lot of stuff, which means I got to wait, which means that's waste. So wouldn't it be nice if we can just stub out what's not ready or what's not changed and just test my stuff, which I know I am changing. So when I make my service call to the other system, again, a service virtualization testing tool, a proxy server, intercepts that call, provides back a cache result, or we run some logic. So the nice thing here is developers like me used to do this by mocking the services, and then we write a lot of code, and I'd actually change the code to point to the mock service. This isn't great, because then when we go to the next level, I have to go back and change the code and point it to the actual service when I do the actual integration testing. That's really not a great practice, because now I have code that I've changed that hasn't been tested in that previous layer. However, with a tool in this space, you can just turn that proxy server on whenever you want to. So maybe there's 100 services in your applications that it knows about, and we can say we want to enable these 60 to be on, and these 40 are pass-throughs. It'll just pass through to the actual service. So what this allows us to do is not change any code. We can test any level of the system, actual services or the proxy services whenever we want to. So what does that mean? Well, that means we don't have to set up the test environment. That means we can do true integration testing earlier. It means if I'm a UI tester and I need database changes or mainframe changes, I don't have to wait for them. I can have them virtualized, and I can do my mobile testing. The other thing we can do is we can start, so that's an example. Let me go back. Yeah, so if I'm at the presentation tier, I can stub out or I can turn off any level of these things that I need. So maybe I need third-party services and they cost money. Maybe I have back-end systems which are inaccessible. Maybe I have an ESB and I have all this other stuff, database, MQ. I can virtualize any number of this and run my presentation tier test cases. As a developer, unit testing, integration testing, eventually we'll get to true system integration tests and we'll want to turn all these on. But I can find a lot of those protocol type defects early on in the life cycle, and I can focus on what I'm supposed to be building as well. Is that clear? So we call that service virtualization testing. The other capability that you may want to consider is this notion of application release orchestration, which essentially says, I don't know a better picture. No, I don't. But if you think about where a lot of people start with continuous delivery or with cloud or with virtualization, it's all at the network operating system layer, maybe a database, and they provision it. And at least what we see, it's still pretty static. We haven't gotten, at least we haven't gotten to that zen of, I'm just going to spin up stuff, test it, and tear it down. And I know it's pure every time I do it. IBM has tools that can do that for you, but we don't see them, organizations ready for that quite yet. So, but what we do see is wanting to deploy and update applications very rapidly. So a lot of people tend to forget about this aspect of their deployment, in where they have builds fixed, they have chef and puppet scripts to create a environment, but then it's always there, it's static. But they want to deploy the application 10 times a day, maybe 10 times a week, however many it is. But that's still manual. Well, that doesn't make any sense. So that's where application release orchestration comes in at automating the movement of applications through different staged environments. So again, the goals here are reduce errors. Humans are very bad at doing repeated tasks. We can improve productivity because it'll go quicker. And then we can have all this enforced and it'll be auditable and traceable. So similarly here, the environment can have plugins to other servers. So if it's a Webster application server, it's a Microsoft server, there'll be plugins to the environment, and you can drag and drop a process of what that deployment looks like. And you don't have to write the code will kind of be behind the scenes, and it's more of a visual process designer. And then you could test this deploy process as you go through that pipeline. So we'll use it to do build, to test, to stage, to production. When we get to production, maybe we do something different. But if we want to do true continuous deployment, now we've tested that process all the way through. And these little goals here, those are meant to be gates, so you can put actual compliance gates there. So if we want to say, we want to have manual approval here, block it, or we can set up like thresholds that we need to have this many tests passing, or this need to have flagged that we have run tests of function tests, security tests, whatever it may be, performance tests. All those have to be showing at a certain level before we can move to the next environment. And it can also do middleware configuration as well as database changes. So what it might look like, if you can think about what an awesome tool might look like that can do this, it might look like something like this. Again, the benefits here, what we're looking at is multiple stages. So at the far left, you'll see dev, QA, prod. I can actually get the reality of the system in the different stages. So I'm not just looking at one particular environment. I'm looking across all the environments. Okay, so this is made up of a database component, a web archive, Tomcat component, a test component. And this is the version that's in there. I could very easily open up QA and say, oh, what version is there? We're missing one. We need to move here and do that. Or there's a new version of dev. And here we're showing like the compliances that this is passing all the compliance specifications that have been set up. So it gives you a nice view of reality. Are we ready to deploy? Or what's the reality of our system? You can come to this and see the applications. And this can also be that artifact repository as well. So we showed back when the build's done, where do I put the deployable asset? Into a library. And then that library can have know about all the different changes that have been made. And it can start to get smart about deploying. So if you changed one file in an object that had 10,000 files, maybe this is smart enough to know not to have to redeploy all 10,000 files. Maybe it just knows to push that one file that had to change. So there's a lot of different value add there. Okay, so this is looking from an internal IBM standpoint. Rational has actually led the charge for DevOps transformation within IBM. So I'm pretty excited about that, actually. In our third quarter results, which you may or may not know weren't stellar. No, this is on the being recorded. All right, they weren't stellar. We made money, just not as much as the analysts want us to. But our CEO, Ginny Rometty, says specifically in their employee broadcast that, there were some challenges, but in the organizations that we were doing DevOps, we saw success. So we're going to double down on our DevOps and try and get more lean and eliminate waste. She basically said, what Alan and I are doing, you guys need to focus more on that. It's like, yeah, finally. Right on. So Rational has actually been put in charge of this initiative, which is the brand of IBM, our small little chunk of IBM that we are in. And we actually have a lot of Center for Excellence, that we have monthly calls where we have similar to meetups, like bring in guest speakers or a team share their best practices. And a lot of it's open source tools they're using, a lot of it's Rational tools, but it's more about, let's just get real and say, how do we get better? How do we do more effective? How do we be more predictable? How can we deliver more effectively? You guys are the experts. Some of the numbers that we've got from using DevOps from the Rational teams are in one of our key products that we were building in 2008. These are the numbers that we were seeing in these different activities. And then in 2013, after that transformation, that's what we got. So basically what we did was we used to deliver once a year in June at our conference. And we've gone to 4 releases a year right now. And we're actually kind of in the point of, some people think that's way too many. They don't want to upgrade that often. The others like, keep it coming, let's do more. So we're in a weird spot as a software tools vendor about who we got to keep happy. But again, think about our project initiation was 30 days in 2008. Well, we got that down to 2 days. That's a huge time saving. The backlog grooming was a 90-day effort of these IBMers just trying to decide, let's do that, no, don't do that, Well, now it's ongoing, right? Great. We're always grooming the backlog, like we should be. This one is almost hilarious, right? Time to development was 120 days before me as an IBM developer, when I was there, even started coding. That's ridiculous. Now it's 3 days, which is great. So our iteration length was, we shortened it a little bit. But basically, you can look at this and see the tremendous improvements that we made just by using some of our tools and by adopting Agile as well as DevOps. And right now, we're actually looking a lot at using SAFe, the Scaled Agile framework. If anybody's familiar with that, I'm not sure we're using the full SAFe. We're kind of like IBM SAFeifying it, but in any case, that seems to be pretty popular internally within IBM. And then other organizations are also taking this. So another IBM account was using our deployment automation tool, and they saw reduced deployment duration and cost of 98%. And we're seeing this with a lot of different groups. Even the Watson group is starting to use the Rational tools for continuous delivery. So pretty exciting time within IBM to be related to DevOps. So what's next on what we're looking at and what we're seeing is we are seeing again, based upon this investment in mobile, social, cloud, those types of innovations, we need an environment to play around with that we can get up to speed very quickly. So we're not talking about DB2, MQ series, WebSphere. We're talking about the new stuff, right? And that's what Bluemix is. So it's a platform as a service. It's a runtime, right? But you can go out there and just drag and drop different things like Twilio, Node, Liberty, all these different capabilities, mobile testing features. And it will provision you a cloud infrastructure, and then you can deploy a sample application that you write to that infrastructure. And you get paid, as you get a trial amount, and then you can pay as much as you use. But the idea is, if I'm a developer and I need to try a new technology, it may take me a while to set that up, download it, get a request a new server to be set up to host it on. But here, maybe that should all be throwaway. So here we can do it very quickly. I can try out the latest things. If I like it, I can move it to our on-prem. If I don't, I just move on to the next thing. So that's what Bluemix is a platform as a service. You can go register for that. And what we're doing with it is, from a rational standpoint, is we're providing the DevOps capabilities around it. So Bluemix, well, my sticker here, is a runtime. But to help you build those applications, we have our DevOps capabilities, everything from, look at that, we're allowing you to have, we're hosting the Git repository for you. Would you ever think the rational clear case guys would say, we offer Git hosting? But we do. Also, we have Jenkins built into this, as well as our Agile planning tools, and a web-based IDE, which is pretty cool. It's the Eclipse Orion. So you can go to a browser, do all of your coding in the Eclipse Orion environment, check it into a Git source control, build it with Jenkins, and deploy it with our delivery pipeline over to the Bluemix environment. So that's what DevOps services, and a closer look at that is, if you look at the life cycle, what's in there. These are capabilities, cloud hosting capabilities for development for this Bluemix platform, which is IBM's platform as a service. So Agile planning, IDE, you can use our source control or Git source control, or you can use GitHub, point to your existing GitHub. Jenkins for builds, security, then we'll use our deployment automation capabilities, and we'll do monitoring analytics and mobile quality, and so forth. So that's very new, very next. And that's getting around, if you want to do this microservices type scaling about, rather than scaling everything, I just want to be able to scale very discreetly. That's what Bluemix can do for you. It has auto scaling built into it. Pretty cool stuff. Then the last thing here is this notion of a full stack developer. Have you guys heard of that? Well, it may be a myth, we'll see. But full stack deployment is something that we're seeing is next. So like I was telling you earlier, a lot of people focus on infrastructure as a code. Other people focus on application deployment automation. Well, what if all those were the same thing, right? When I went to provision an application, it took everything with it: network, operating system, the application, the database, and maybe that was across 10 servers, and every time I deployed, it was brand new, and I could do that. That's what this notion of full stack is being able to encode, make everything that I need for this to work across however many servers. I store that and then able to run it. So this makes use of a standard called, well, this is our tool, shameless plug there, Urban Code Deploy with Patterns. But think of it as, again, a visual pattern designer where you can drag and drop different environments. So if you need a Windows server with this amount of memory and this and that, and your application deploys to 4 of those, then you can capture that in a pattern. The really cool thing here is this OpenStack provides a template for what that looks like, as well as this engine called Heat. So it's a Heat orchestration template. And any OpenStack provider, you could take that and run it on. So you can use this tool to develop cloud patterns and run it on non-IBM clouds, assuming they're OpenStack compliant, which is like Red Hat is, I think VMware is trying to be. I don't know if they are or not, but they probably will be soon. So you can take it to any open standard. So you have no lock-in from a cloud, vendor lock-in from a cloud standard. So this is a urban code deploy with patterns. So that's why they say design once, deploy anywhere. And then you can manage those patterns as an asset, just like you would source control and say, we got to make a change to the pattern. The really cool thing is, from my standpoint, again, speaking as a developer, if I need to make a change to a database schema, I'm not allowed to make that change, am I? No, I got to talk to the database guy, and then of course they're saying, whoa, 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 why do you got to make that change? Blah, blah, blah. And then the network guys, maybe they have, it's very hard to collaborate across silos. But if each person can do their own thing, and then put it together as a pattern, and I can just say, and maybe we have 4 blessed patterns, like a small, medium, large, and extra large. Oh, for this project, I just need a small. For this project, I need an extra large. And these have already been blessed by each one of the different silos groups. And if they've added their part to it, then it's very easy for me to spin those up, make it repeatable. That's the idea behind the pattern for that deployment. Okay, homework. IBM DevOps page, we have a DevOps for Dummies book. Oh, I think I have a copy here, wait a second. I'll give you a copy of our DevOps for Dummies book. Not that anybody here is a dummy, right? You're clearly here to get it. You know why DevOps is important. But if somebody could tell me the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment.
Continuous delivery has a grade review manually, where somebody chooses to deploy to the production environment. Continuous deployment, you have to just
That is at least my understanding as well. I'm sure we could have a whole debate about that. But here you go. So we also have an application release and deployment. This really goes about at a high level what we were talking about earlier today, and then the other book dives into more of the application release and orchestration. And then if you go to ibm.com/DevOps, you can see the DevOps story, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be refreshed on the 20th, the DevOps page content. So there's a little shameless sneak plug for you. All right, so I think that was it. Were there any questions? Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to qualify this by saying this might be like, hopefully it doesn't come off like a jerk question. But, so at the beginning of your presentation, you talk about how IBM is trying, and like organizations try to align delivering business value, or aligning with the technology with delivering business value to their business partners, right? And then you're presenting the stuff about being able to do the automated testing, all this cool stuff that you guys are going to do, but I didn't really get how they come back together. And if you could speak to that, and then also talk about your interviews with like your different customers and all the people you work with, how many organizations actually say like, okay, you know what, we shouldn't be doing this product, and we should shift our focus because of using your methodology. Does that make sense, the 2 questions? So 1,
Yeah.
tie it back together, and then 2, how do you, how many people stopped what they were doing, and then,
You want me to?
yeah. Sorry, the qualifier is did a master's in this? Or like this
It's a good question.
Pull this one back.
So I'll quickly answer. So you are right. We kind of divided the discussion between us. I took the first, high-level approach. Let's talk about, maybe like this part of the circle, and John took the. Now, why did we emphasize the more deploy and toolsy part? Because of the nature of the meetup that we're talking, right? From past experience, I've seen at this meetup very technical people. You guys want to see solutions, so we focus on that. There's a whole slew of solutions and products and best practices that we can talk about, which are more on the higher level. One of them is, as I mentioned before, how do you pick and choose which projects you're going to implement? I mean, that's a very important question, because if you remember, we talked about upwards of 70% of your budget are going just to keep the lights on. So this other meager 25, 30%, I mean, you really want to use them where they're going to make an impact. So how do you know what makes an impact? How do you decide? Were there customers that changed their directions as a result of using a tool? The answer is absolutely. Now, how do you know? So I'm not going to get too much into the details, but some of the tools we offer allows you to gather ideas from multiple people in the organization. So think about very large corporation. People are submitting ideas. This line of business thing that we need a program to improve the way we do points. This other line of business thinks that we need to improve our accounting system. Okay, so each one submits ideas. Then the tool allows you to build business cases. Okay, then the tool does a lot of comparisons, allows people to compare one project with another project on a slew of criteria. Okay, the end result is the collaborative wisdom on what should be our direction. Okay? Now, of course, the CEO can veto everything and just decide something else, but at least you have some common understanding of where it is that we need to go. Okay? From there, we have other solutions that will make IT much more transparent. So whatever you guys are working on will be immediately visible to the other line of business. Now, we made a conscious decision not to discuss that at depth in this session, but trust me, we could spend the whole night here just going to, but very, very good question.
And a lot of it, like again, Alan was saying, is you need to be able to show why these DevOps initiatives are worth investing in. And things like service test virtualization as well as deployment automation. There's a real easy way to show ROI with that. If it takes 8 weeks per test cycle to set up the environment, and all of a sudden I could shrink that down to a day or less, done. That's a lot of money that I can save, and that means I can get to market quicker. It means I can have higher quality, yada yada yada, all that stuff. So that's what I would say. Typically, we would do the workshop. We'd figure out a way of where we need to focus on, and maybe those are some of the ways that we do. And then step 3, 4 would be more things like steering and monitoring. But they would all come back to this. But you would have to do the whole thing in one sitting. And it wouldn't even have to be IBM tools, right? We're just saying these are some practices that we see successful and show you good return on investment.
Any other questions? Alrighty, so thank you so much. Oh,
Sorry,
one more
one
question there.
question. What kind of metrics are teams using to confirm that they're getting the improvement that they're looking for?
In which
Defects, or is it more on productivity?
Well, I think that
reuse.
that'll vary depending. So from an IBM standpoint, as your partner, we can do a business value assessment for you, and we can show you productivity improvements, which tend to be loosey-goosey-ish, like it's hard to prove. Quality can be easier, as well as so if you go back to the metrics that I was showing before about internally, if you pick out specific practices, and then like how long certain things take, and what was the number of defects and when were they found, all of that I think is very important. But the key is you have to have metrics in the beginning. A lot of times there are no metrics, right, that are actually concrete that we can point to and say, yeah, we made an improvement, but what are we comparing it against? What was the baseline? So a lot of times people come in with that and say, well, these are what my boss told me to track. And so then we have to say, well, are they the right metrics? Should we capture something else? And I do think it varies, but definitely I think it's about time to value as well as quality and however you want to track those.
Anything else? Alrighty then, thanks everyone.
All right, thanks.